Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really profound shift happening right now across the country. We're going to explore why a growing number of young, ambitious Canadians are making incredibly difficult life decisions about where to build their futures. Ultimately, it's a story about the changing Canadian dream, the real human impact of modern affordability, and most importantly, how people are successfully adapting to thrive in a totally new economic landscape.
So, let's start with the big, obvious question. Why are so many young Canadians suddenly looking for the exit?
You know, this really isn't just about spreadsheets and economic data. It's about the emotional toll of doing everything right and still feeling totally stuck. Take this reality in Halifax, for example. We have a young professional spending 70% of their net salary just to keep a $2,000 a month downtown apartment. Imagine doing everything you were told to do, getting the education, landing the job, and still nearly 3/4 of your paycheck just vanishes the moment it hits your bank account. It makes paying off student debt or saving for the future feel merely impossible. What we're actually seeing here are two massive forces colliding. On one side, local salaries have remained pretty stagnant, slowly getting eaten away by inflation. And on the other side, skyrocketing shelter costs that have completely decoupled from local income growth. It's this exact friction, earning a solid professional wage but feeling like you are constantly falling behind, that is forcing so many people to look at a map and reevaluate.
And that pressure is showing up in some very real, very surprising ways. Right now, 28% of all Canadians are seriously considering leaving their province just because of housing pressures. And honestly, it's even more striking when you look at recent immigrants. That number jumps to 39%. These are folks who chose Canada with the promise of a better life, but who are now discovering that the immediate reality is less of a dream and more of a daily financial tightrope walk.
If this immense pressure is pushing people out, we have to ask, who is actually packing their bags? What do the demographics of this silent exodus look like? Well, we aren't seeing an even migration across the board. A massive 67% of all immigrants fall right into the 20 to 44 age bracket, and roughly 70% of them hold at least a university degree. We're talking about early to mid-career professionals who are taking their prime working years and all their future potential and going somewhere else. And it gets incredibly specific. Canada is literally bleeding specialized talent, especially in STEM fields. We are losing 66% of our software engineering grads and nearly a third in computer science. These are the brilliant minds meant to build our future tech infrastructure, and they're leaving at genuinely alarming rates.
Which all culminates in this truly staggering statistic, 65,372. That is the historic high of net emigration departures recorded during the 2024 to 2025 fiscal period. It's the highest level we've seen in a 50-year data tracking series. Let that sink in for a second. These aren't just data points. These are tens of thousands of real people severing ties, packing up their lives, and betting their entire futures on a different geography.
But why do these ambitious minds feel capped here at home? Well, a lot of it comes down to what economists call the missing middle. See, Canada relies heavily on a few massive, dominant corporations. Think big banks and telecoms. Because we lack a thriving, dynamic middle layer of rapidly growing medium-sized businesses, young professionals are finding fewer exciting projects. They're basically hitting a ceiling on their professional growth way too early in their careers. And then, of course, there is the undeniable financial pull from south of the border. In the tech sector alone, the median pre-tax wage in the US is 46% higher than it is here in Canada. When you combine that with deeper venture capital pools, a higher concentration of startups, and the currency exchange rate, the financial incentive for a young professional to leave is incredibly powerful. So we know they're leaving, but where exactly are these young Canadians choosing to plant their roots?
Based on recent UN data, it's probably no surprise that the United States is the primary destination, absorbing over 61% of the outflow, mostly for those higher wages and career growth. But look at the alternatives here. Mexico captures 8%, largely driven by remote workers stretching their dollars in a place with a much lower cost of living. And the UK takes 7%, pulling people in with a completely different European lifestyle and travel opportunities.
But hey, not everyone is leaving the country entirely. There is a massive domestic shift happening too. We're seeing huge interprovincial migration, primarily driven by folks in British Columbia and Ontario who are looking to escape those crushing housing costs by moving to Alberta. It's really a search for a better overall quality of life, the realistic ability to actually own a home, and, in some cases, improved access to healthcare and public services.
Now, It is very easy to romanticize a big move. So it's time for our reality check. We have to balance the narrative and ask the hard question. Is the grass actually greener on the other side? Moving, especially internationally, comes with complex trade-offs that you just don't see on a salary spreadsheet.
Take the US, for instance. Sure, the wages are absolutely alluring, and the capital markets are deep. But that often comes at the tangible cost of Canada's social safety net. You're trading a public healthcare system for a highly complex, employer-tied private insurance model where out-of-pocket risks can be severe. It's a trade-off between maximizing your personal financial gain and living in a society with a totally different baseline of social stability. It works brilliantly for some, but it's a massive risk for others.
Or what about hopping across the pond to Europe for a better lifestyle? Well, it isn't exactly a magic wand. Yes, the day-to-day cost of living might be 10 to 15% lower in places like Spain or Portugal, but you are often stepping into a system with personal income taxes that are 10 to 20% higher than back home. Moving abroad doesn't automatically solve your financial problems. Honestly, it just changes the math.
So if leaving the country entirely has its own major pitfalls, let's look at the alternatives. What can people realistically do? How are successful young Canadians adapting without completely abandoning ship?
Here's a highly effective, alternative strategy that a lot of knowledge workers are actually using today. Step 1. Secure US-based remote work to capture those higher international wages. Step 2. Relocate out of hyper-expensive metros like Toronto or Vancouver and move to a lower-cost, maybe more rural, Canadian municipality. Step 3. Benefit massively from earning in US dollars while paying your living expenses in Canadian dollars. It's an incredible way to import wealth and inject it straight into local Canadian communities.
And there are also actionable government-backed solutions available right now if you know where to look. Programs like Team Canada Strong are pouring $2.9 billion into training and hiring 100,000 trades workers. The AI for All strategy is creating tens of thousands of placements in emerging tech. And if you're willing to work in underserved rural areas, particularly in healthcare or social services, there are aggressive student loan forgiveness programs. The opportunity is there, for sure, but it requires pivoting to where the demand actually is.
The fundamental takeaway here, it's absolutely not a story of doom and gloom. Canada is not failing, it's just structurally evolving. And just as the economy evolves, individuals must adapt their strategies to thrive within it. Adapting to the future means finding your own path, being incredibly flexible, and thinking creatively about how you apply your unique skills. The landscape has undeniably changed. The old playbook, just getting a degree and buying a house in the city center, well, that might be outdated. But new playbooks are being written every single day by resilient, creative Canadians. So the question I'll leave you with is this: how will you adapt your own definition of success in this changing economic reality? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope this gives you the clarity to make smarter, more informed decisions about your own exciting future.